They say love has no age, but sometimes love has secrets. Deadly ones. She was a 52-year-old woman who finally found love again. She smiled in her wedding photos, posted them on Facebook, and captioned it, "Forever starts now." Less than 24 hours later, she was dead, burned alive in her own home by the man who had vowed to protect her. This wasn't just a crime of passion. It was premeditated. Calculated. And worst of all, it wasn't the first time he'd done it. If you're drawn to real-life stories that peel back the layers of human nature, the lies, the manipulation, and the darkness that hides behind smiles, please subscribe to True Crime Stories Arena. Hit that bell so you never miss a story. Because the truth doesn't just hide. It burns. Monica DeWitt was the kind of woman people noticed without knowing why. 52 years old, poised in heels that never clicked too loudly, with eyes that held just a little more history than her smile let on. She was Charlotte's go-to wedding planner, the mastermind behind dream days that ended in rose petals and applause. But behind closed doors, Monica's own love story had ended long ago. Widowed. Childless. Alone in a house built for a future that never came. Success had become her sanctuary, and her cage. The love she gave to others' ceremonies. It never found its way back to her. But Monica never complained. Instead, she smiled. Witty, elegant, and always in control. The ache? She wore it like perfume, subtle, present, and undetectable to most. Then, he appeared. As if conjured from the very fairy tales she helped others live out. Julian Cade. 27. Former model, eyes like secrets, a voice dipped in honey and shadow. They met at an art-themed wedding she orchestrated, him, a last-minute addition to the guest list. She thought he was someone's cousin. He said he was building a music career, spoken like a man who'd never held a real job, but who made dreams sound like promises. He listened when she spoke. Not like others did. He wrote her poems. Quoted Neruda with a southern lilt. Rubbed her shoulders on hard days and touched her grief with reverence, not pity. To Monica, he was everything she had stopped believing in. To Julian, she was just the next opportunity. The romance moved like fire in dry grass. Blazing. Irresistible. Dangerous. They were inseparable within weeks. Mornings blurred into nights. Dinners by candlelight. Handwritten notes on her pillow. He moved in before the season changed. Friends raised eyebrows. Whispered concerns over wine and brunches. He's half your age, Monica. What do you really know about him? She waved it all away with that signature laugh, the one she used when she didn't want to answer. Love doesn't ask for credentials, she'd say. It just arrives. He said he didn't care about her money, that her heart was wealth enough. And when she questioned the speed of it all, he silenced her with a kiss and a promise. I see forever when I look at you. 6 months later, they married in a secluded garden she once designed for clients. Barefoot in designer gowns, laughing like teenagers who'd beaten the odds. She called their age gap timeless. He called her his miracle. The camera captured her glowing. The beach selfies. The stolen glances. The ring that shimmered like it had always belonged on her hand. But fairy tales, real ones, they come with wolves dressed as charmers. Every love story has a past, 2 lives, 2 histories, merging into one. But when Monica tried to look back into Julian's life, there was nothing but fog. No parents to meet. No siblings, no childhood friends. Not a single photo of a birthday cake, a school recital, or a teenage smile. Just scattered, vague stories of broken homes, cold nights, and pain too deep for detail. He said he was raised in group homes. Said his father died in prison. Claimed his mother overdosed before he could remember her voice. Sometimes he said he moved a lot. Other times, that he'd been in one place too long. The pieces never quite fit. But love makes excuses. And Monica made plenty. She told herself it was trauma, he didn't want to relive it. She said he wasn't hiding anything, just healing in silence. When a job he once mentioned didn't check out, he blamed clerical errors. When the music label he claimed to work with had never heard of him, he shrugged and said, "They're just not giving me credit yet." Little lies floated like dust. Easy to brush off. Easy to forget, until they settled into patterns too precise to ignore. The truth was buried, but not gone. Because some shadows cling no matter how far you run. Julian Cade wasn't born from stardust and sorrow. He was forged in fire, and left behind a trail of ash. Public records, sealed in some states, forgotten in others, whispered the parts he never spoke. The first time his name appeared was in a police report from Nashville. He was 15, angry, volatile, and already slipping between the cracks. Accused, but never convicted, of setting a fire that gutted a foster home. 5 boys displaced. 1 hospitalized. Julian said he'd been framed by another kid. The charges were dropped for lack of evidence. But the staff remembered. He never blinked, one counselor wrote. He just watched it burn. By 18, he vanished again. No college records. No job references. Just a sudden reappearance in Florida, living with a woman twice his age. Friends said she spoiled him. Neighbors said she was obsessed. Her name was Caroline Ames. She died in a house fire just 14 months after they met. The official cause? Electrical fault. But questions lingered. Julian collected her life insurance, just under $75,000. He left the state 3 weeks later. Then, another city. Another woman. Different name, same story. Angela Brooks, 47. Retired teacher. Met Julian at a poetry reading. She told her sister he made her feel young again. 6 months later, her lakeside home went up in flames. She was found unconscious in the living room, overcome by smoke. Julian survived with minor burns. The fire marshal noted irregularities, accelerant traces. But the case stalled. No arrest. No motive, officially. But unofficially. Whispers. Patterns. 2 women. Both older. Both smitten. Both dead in fires deemed accidents. The only thread tying them together was Julian. Mugshots. Blurred out court records. Flickering images of charred houses. The glint of a smile too practiced to be innocent. Julian was no stranger to fire. He believed it erased problems. He believed flames could rewrite the past, if you made sure no one lived to remember it. And while the past smoldered in silence, Monica dreamed in color. She made him coffee every morning. Bought him a guitar he never played. Showed him off at events where guests whispered behind crystal flutes. She thought she was living her second chance. But Julian wasn't building a life with Monica. He was studying her. Learning her routines. Mapping her home, her habits, and her vulnerabilities. She didn't notice the way he always knew where the smoke alarms were. Or how he watched the gas lines being serviced. Or how he asked about her will, twice. She chalked it up to curiosity. To youth. To a man just trying to plan their future. But Julian never planned for the future. He planned for the end. And for Monica, that plan was already in motion. It was a perfect afternoon. The kind of day Monica had curated 100 times for others, but this time, it was hers. In her own backyard, under strands of golden fairy lights and petals that drifted like blessings, Monica DeWitt stood in a gown she had designed herself, simple, elegant, timeless. A string quartet played softly. The guest list was small. Intimate. Friends. Clients turned companions. Just enough to make it feel real. Just enough to make it feel safe. Julian wore a white linen suit and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. They said their vows under a blooming magnolia. He promised to love her in all seasons. She promised to never let go. And for a moment, Monica believed the past had no power here. That age was just a number. That love, once lost, could be reborn. She uploaded a photo later that evening, her hand in his, the ring shimmering like a promise kept. Forever starts now, the caption read. The post was up for less than an hour before the likes started pouring in. Friends, acquaintances, past brides, hundreds of comments. You deserve this. Look at you glowing. He's lucky to have you. She zoomed in on her smile. touched the screen, saved it to her favorites. But that single upload sealed her fate. Monica went to bed that night in a haze of happiness. A little wine, a lot of laughter. Her cheeks still sore from smiling. Her dress carefully hung in the closet. Her bouquet in a vase by the window. She wore his t-shirt. Fell asleep with her wedding band pressed against her chest. She didn't hear the creak of the floorboards. She didn't see him standing at the foot of the bed, watching. Julian had waited until the house was quiet. Until the last text was sent, the last candle snuffed. He walked to the garage, barefoot. Moved like he had done this before. There, behind the gardening supplies, was a red gas can, half full. The same one she'd used 2 weeks earlier when her car wouldn't start. He carried it like it weighed nothing. He doesn't hesitate. He opens the door. Crosses the room. And begins to pour. The gasoline soaks into the carpet, the sheets, the nightstand. The scent fills the air, sharp and sickening. Monica stirs, once, but doesn't wake. He stands there for a moment, looking down at her. At the woman who gave him everything. It's not personal, he whispers. Then, the match. She wakes to a world on fire. Her skin already burning. The sheets wrapped around her like ropes. Smoke pours into her lungs. She screams his name, once, twice, but he's already gone. Neighbors hear the chaos. A loud bang. Glass shattering. Then more screaming. One neighbor, a retired nurse, tries to reach the house, but the heat pushes her back. Another calls 911. The dispatcher notes panic in the caller's voice. She's in there. She's still in there. The fire department arrives in under 7 minutes. By then, there is nothing left to save. The flames were hungry. They devoured everything. The bed. The photographs. The gown still hanging in the closet. All the delicate details Monica had spent a lifetime creating, gone in a single night. Her body was found near the foot of the bed. Curled. Charred. One hand reaching toward the window. Toward air. Toward hope. Julian was found 2 blocks away. Shirtless. Barefoot. Covered in soot. He told police he had tried to save her. That he'd gone to get help. That it was an accident. But the fire told a different story. Arson investigators found the gasoline residue. The burn pattern led straight to the bed. There was no faulty wire. No candle left unattended. And then came the records. The other fires. The other women. The long line of ashes he'd left behind. Julian didn't cry at the scene. Didn't ask to see her. When told she hadn't made it, he just nodded. In the end, it wasn't rage that killed Monica. It wasn't jealousy or betrayal. It was calculation. Cold, practiced calculation. He didn't want her. He wanted the story, the access, the sympathy, the money. And when the fantasy had run its course, he lit the match. Monica DeWitt believed in love until her final breath. And Julian Cade? He believed in endings. Fast. Final. And fueled by fire. The official cause of death was smoke inhalation. But the fire's origin was far from accidental. Investigators arrived just after dawn. The structure was still steaming, skeletal and blackened. The master bedroom was gone, reduced to soot and silence. Yet in the midst of the wreckage, something felt wrong. The fire had moved too quickly. Too cleanly. It hadn't crept, it had devoured. They collected samples from the floorboards and charred remains of furniture. Within 24 hours, the lab confirmed the presence of an accelerant, gasoline, unmistakably. And just like that, grief gave way to suspicion. The news hit Charlotte's morning broadcasts by noon. Well-known wedding planner dies in suspicious house fire. A city mourned. But behind closed doors, investigators were already compiling a profile. One detective, a seasoned arson specialist, remarked, "Fires tell stories. If you listen long enough, they'll tell you who lit the match." And then, Monica's best friend came forward. She was the one Monica had called after the break-in scare. 2 weeks before the wedding. Nothing had been stolen, but something had felt off. A door left open. A faint smell of smoke in the hallway. Monica hadn't reported it, but she'd taken precautions. She installed a home security app. Discreet. Connected to her phone. Motion activated. Cloud-based. Her friend handed over Monica's phone. Password protected. Fingerprint locked. But the police had resources, and a warrant. Monica never knew it would capture her own murder. In a dark evidence room, beneath humming lights, detectives opened the app. The screen flickered. There, in black and white, was the last hour of Monica DeWitt's life. The app had been quietly recording from a secondary camera, one hidden behind a decorative bookshelf in the bedroom, installed as an afterthought. The footage had synced automatically to the cloud, preserving everything the flames had tried to destroy. They watched Julian enter the bedroom. Shirtless. Barefoot. Silent. He walked to her side, stood over her for nearly a minute. Then turned, left the room, and returned with the gas can. They saw it all. The pour. The saturation of the mattress. The deliberate spread to the carpet, the curtains, the baseboards. And then, the match. Julian doesn't flinch. Doesn't speak again. He watches her burn for 4 seconds, then turns and walks out. The footage was time-stamped. The whisper he gave before the strike, "It's not personal," was caught in full. And in that moment, the fire lost its power. Julian had planned the perfect murder. But he didn't know about the cloud. He didn't know about the lens behind the books Monica never read but always dusted. The house burned to ash, but the truth survived. They didn't rush it. They built the case brick by digital brick. The footage was backed up, verified, analyzed frame by frame. The accelerant traces matched the gas can found in the garage. The burns on Julian's arms were shallow, precisely where you'd expect if he'd thrown the match and walked away. The 911 call from the neighbor. The inconsistencies in Julian's statement. His failure to mention trying to save her. His eerie calm at the scene. It added up. A week later, they arrested him in a rented room downtown. He was alone. Packing a bag. He claimed he was going to a grief retreat in Asheville. They read him his rights. He asked for a lawyer. But not once did he ask what evidence they had. Charlotte grieved again, this time with anger. The woman they called the Queen of Ceremonies had been murdered by the man she believed was her second chance. The man who held her hand at sunset, and set her bed on fire before sunrise. The footage, though never made public, became legend among detectives. The kind of case that trains a generation. That teaches you evil doesn't always look like rage. Sometimes, it looks like a kiss goodnight. Monica's social media froze in time. The wedding photo. The caption. The ring on her finger. Her smile. Forever starts now. But forever lasted less than a day. Guilt doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like precision. And Julian Cade was nothing if not precise. In the early hours following the fire, as investigators sifted through ashes and neighbors gave statements, Julian slipped away, unnoticed, unbothered, and unburdened. He vanished like smoke. Credit cards. Abandoned. Cell phone. Smashed and left in a storm drain 5 blocks from the scene. He took only what he could carry, a duffel bag, a bundle of cash, and the one thing he had always relied on, his charm. He headed west. By the time the warrant was signed, Julian Cade was already in Texas. In Austin, he became Eli Monroe. No online presence, no digital footprint. He checked into a budget motel under a fake name, paid cash, and used earplugs at night to block out the sound of sirens. He avoided main streets. Didn't stay in one place longer than an hour. Ate alone, spoke little, kept his eyes down. But no matter how carefully you disappear, habits leave fingerprints. It was a Tuesday. Warm. Unremarkable. Julian walked into a corner store just off East 7th Street. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He needed cash, and quickly. The ATM was old. Grainy security camera perched above it like a watchful crow. He pulled the hoodie low over his face. Inserted a prepaid debit card. Entered a PIN. Took out $60. And just before turning to leave, he looked up. 1 second. 1 glance. That was all it took. The surveillance footage hit the local police log within hours. A night shift analyst flagged the movement pattern. The posture. The jawline. The scar beneath the left eye. Cross-checked with the nationwide bulletin, person of interest, Julian Cade. Homicide investigation. Considered dangerous. The hoodie was different. The beard was thicker. But the face was the same. Within 3 hours, the footage was in the hands of the Charlotte Homicide Task Force. By sunrise, a multi-agency manhunt was in full motion. They traced his cash purchases. Interviewed ride-share drivers. Pulled motel records. And they found him. Motel 9. Off the I-35 service road. Room 207. The team moved in at 4:38 a.m. 5 officers. No sirens. No knock. They opened the door with a master key. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, shoes on, bag packed. No struggle. No resistance. He looked at the officers with tired eyes. Almost amused. Guess she couldn't handle forever after all, he said. As if it was all just a headline. A joke. As if the fire that consumed Monica DeWitt had been nothing more than a chapter he'd already finished reading. They flew him back in cuffs. Surrounded by silence. He didn't ask questions. Didn't deny anything. Didn't even blink when they showed him the footage. He watched himself light the match like he was watching someone else's movie. The tape didn't lie. And neither did the burns on his skin. Julian Cade ran. But the fire never stopped chasing him. And when it finally caught him, it didn't scream. It whispered justice. The trial drew a crowd. Every seat in the courtroom was filled, some by reporters, others by those who knew Monica, and many more who had never met her, but had been touched by the woman she once was, and shattered by the way she left this world. Julian Cade entered wearing a county-issued suit, his hands shackled, his face unchanged. No tears. No apology. Just that same quiet vacancy, the look of a man watching time pass like it belongs to someone else. They had the footage. The jury watched it in silence. Some turned away when the flames started. One juror wept. Another clenched the arms of her seat so hard, the wood cracked. Julian never looked up. They heard the whisper. It's not personal. They watched her struggle, watched her vanish beneath fire and shadow. And they heard his footsteps leaving. But the video was just the beginning. Investigators traced his past like breadcrumbs across state lines. From Caroline Ames in Florida, to Angela Brooks in Tennessee, and whispers in Kansas City of another woman, another fire, another closed case too quickly called accidental. The pattern was his signature. The fire, his final punctuation. Gasoline. Older women. Fast romances. Sudden flames. Silent exits. Each story more alike than the last, each woman lost in a blaze of trust and terror. It took the jury just under 4 hours. Guilty. First-degree murder. Arson. Fraud. The judge read the sentence without flinching, life in prison. No possibility of parole. And even then, Julian didn't blink. Didn't speak. Just turned, and walked with deputies down a hallway he would never return from. Her smile became the symbol. Her death, the catalyst. Within weeks, families of his former partners began to petition for reopened investigations. New questions arose. New evidence emerged. Cold cases thawed beneath the heat of long-overdue justice. And while Julian Cade would never walk free again, the echoes of what he did stretched far beyond one house, one match, one night. Monica DeWitt believed in second chances. She believed love could return after loss. That the heart, though broken, could beat again. That fairy tales weren't just for the young, but for the hopeful. She believed in beginnings. What she didn't see coming was the end. This wasn't just a love story gone wrong. It was a warning. A lesson dressed in silk and fire. In a world that glorifies whirlwind romance, we often ignore the pauses, the silence between words, the lies behind soft eyes. Julian K. didn't wear a mask. He wore charm. He wore attentiveness. He wore the exact version of himself Monica wanted to believe in. That's what made him dangerous. He didn't break in with force. He was invited in, with wine, poetry, and promises. We don't talk enough about emotional predators. About how they study grief, mirror our vulnerabilities, and make broken people feel whole, just long enough to own them. We miss the red flags. We explain away the inconsistencies. We call it romance when it's manipulation. We call it fate when it's a formula. Monica's tragedy was not naivety. It was trust. It was faith in the goodness of another human being. So many people watched from the sidelines. Friends who worried. Strangers who raised eyebrows. But no one stopped it. Because no one could imagine that love could be lethal. Her story isn't just a crime. It's a conversation. One that begs us to ask harder questions. Listen more carefully. And understand that sometimes, the most dangerous people are the ones who make you feel safe too quickly. If stories like Monica's haunt you, they should. Because these stories aren't just rare, they're real. And they're often hiding in plain sight. Behind Instagram filters. Wedding hashtags. Perfect smiles. Monica's story teaches us that darkness doesn't always knock. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it brings flowers. If this story moved you, share it. Help us shine a light into the hidden corners of human nature. Help us give voice to the silenced, the forgotten, the ones whose smiles disguise the danger standing beside them. Like. Share. Subscribe. Because some truths only come out after the final flame goes out.